They don't want you to know this, but Spain and Portugal were once home to one of the most advanced civilizations in history, a golden age of knowledge, art, and power, completely erased from the mainstream narrative. But what really happened to the Muslims of Al-Andalus? And why is their story buried under centuries of propaganda? For nearly 800 years, Muslims ruled vast parts of Spain and Portugal, creating an empire that transformed Europe. They built grand cities, preserved ancient knowledge, and introduced groundbreaking scientific advancements. Yet today, most people only remember the brutal Reconquista, the Christian conquest that wiped them out. But was it really just a war between Christians and Muslims? Or is there a hidden story that history books refuse to tell? If you walk through the streets of Cordoba, Granada, or Seville today, you'll see remnants of an empire that once stood at the peak of civilization. But you won't find many people talking about what happened to the millions of Muslims who lived here. They didn't all vanish overnight, so where did they go and why was their history erased? The rise of Al-Andalus. How Muslim forces conquered the Iberian Peninsula in 711 AD, led by the legendary general Tariq ibn Ziyad. The rapid expansion of the Umayyad Caliphate and the formation of an Islamic state in what is now Spain and Portugal. The strategic brilliance behind their swift victories, the role of the Visigothic civil war in weakening resistance, and how the Muslims established governance over diverse populations. A golden age of knowledge, how Al-Andalus became a beacon of science, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. The House of Wisdom, scholars like Averroes and Al-Zarawi, and their influence on the European Renaissance. The translation movement that preserved and enhanced Greek and Roman knowledge, how Islamic scholars introduced new concepts in mathematics like algebra, medicine such as surgical tools and medical encyclopedias, and astronomy, including astrolabes and the first observations of supernovae. Cultural fusion and coexistence, the unique blend of Islamic, Christian, and Jewish cultures. How Al-Andalus created a diverse, tolerant society, until things started to change. The roles of convivencia, interfaith collaborations, and shared advancements in architecture, music, and philosophy. How this cultural melting pot created influences that remain in Spanish and Portuguese societies today. The turning point. The slow decline of Muslim rule as Christian kingdoms in the north began to push back. The rise of the Catholic monarchs, the fall of Toledo, and the long, bloody battle for Granada. The key battles and shifting alliances between Muslim and Christian rulers, the betrayals, and the internal conflicts within Muslim rule that weakened their stronghold. The fall of Granada in 1492, how the last Muslim stronghold in Spain fell to Ferdinand and Isabella. What followed was one of the darkest chapters in European history. Forced conversions, massacres, and the Spanish Inquisition. The broken promises of religious tolerance, how Muslims were given the choice between exile and conversion, and the brutal consequences for those who tried to resist. What happened to the Muslims? Many converted to Christianity to survive, but they were never fully accepted. The story of the Moriscos, Muslims who were forced to convert but were later expelled from Spain, how their culture and identity were systematically erased, how they were suspected of secretly practicing Islam, the discrimination they faced, and the brutal policies that ultimately led to their mass expulsion in the early 1600s. Portugal's forgotten Muslim past, how Portugal also had a significant Muslim population, and how its history has been overshadowed by Spain's Reconquista. The hidden mosques, forgotten towns, and lost legacy of Portugal's Islamic past. The role of Muslims in Portugal's early maritime explorations, the influence of Islamic cartography in the Age of Discovery, and the traces of Islamic influence in modern Portuguese culture and architecture. The final expulsion of the Moriscos in the early 1600s was the last nail in the coffin. Spain and Portugal erased their Muslim past so thoroughly that most people today don't even know it existed. But traces remain, in the architecture, in the language, in the very DNA of the people. History is written by the victors, but the story of Al-Andalus refuses to die. The legacy of Muslim Spain and Portugal still lingers in ways most people don't realize. It's a story of power, knowledge, betrayal, and survival. And it's one that deserves to be remembered. If you want to hear more hidden stories from history, subscribe now.